Welcome to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast with Eric Tashline from Connecticut Capital. In this podcast, we help business owners and successful professionals plan for better wealth outcomes. Join us for this journey where we explore ways to help you identify better wealth decisions to help you achieve an unfettered life. It's time to ask yourself, what do you want more of?
Hello and welcome to Unfettered Wealth with Eric Tashline. Eric, what is going on this morning?
Good morning, buddy. Happy Friday.
Yes, thank you. I'm looking forward to a great weekend. What are you doing this weekend?
So I'm fired up. I mean, we attended a local lacrosse championship for the high school, went into double overtime. We knew a lot of the players.
Wow.
Unfortunately, we lost, I was like 9-8, and basically it was sudden death. So my youngest daughter plays lacrosse, and the cool thing is I think it really motivated her. Tonight she's like, Dad, can we practice? And she's got a couple games over the weekend, so I'm fired up for that.
Oh, man, that'll be fun. Absolutely. Now, I know you brought a guest on the show today, right?
I did. So today we have Jason Beach, who's principal and regional manager over at HRP Associates. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning, Eric. Hi, Eric.
Hey, buddy. So, appreciate you coming on. I know you do significant work with a lot of manufacturing firms and other companies. And, just wanted to understand a little better about, what your company does and what your role is there. And I guess I should ask you, Jason, listen, you and I have spent a lot of time together. I know you're a real bright guy. I know you work really hard and probably could have pursued any career. I was just curious, how did you end up in the field of environmental consulting?
Yeah, all right. So, it's kind of, I would say it starts with my roots in upstate New York. I grew up in cow country, sort of in the northern Catskill Mountains. And as a kid, we didn't have video games or arcades or shopping malls where I grew up. You'd have to drive about an hour to get anywhere like that. So basically, I spent my youth out in the woods and fields, playing in the streams, just, enjoying the natural environment, really curious about, just the natural environment, and used to find fossils when I was walking through the woods and playing along the streams and stuff. So just had this curiosity for our world and the earth and our natural environment. And, that sort of guided me through my youth. And then my parents, of course, were really insistent on my sister and I going to college because neither of them had the opportunity to go to college. And they really felt it was important for us to, get a higher education. Sure. So they guided us in that direction. And I ended up at Hartwick College in Oneonta, New York. And I didn't really feel like studying political science or art history or economics or anything like that. It just didn't interest me. So I was more, pulled toward the sciences. And with my youth and my curiosity for our world and stuff, I just sort of gravitated toward geology. So I was a geology major. And one of my good mentors in college was a gentleman. Interestingly, his name is Eric Johnson, PhD, Dr. Johnson. I think he's still there at Hartwick College. And he actually met a colleague of mine, or a former colleague of mine here at HRP at a geology conference in Boston. They had a couple beers. We're talking about the growth of the industry, and he mentioned my name and made the connection. And actually, it was May 2001 that I interviewed here at HRP Associates. And here I am still 20 years later.
That's awesome. There's something to be said for first-generation college students. I grew up, blue-collar household. Sounds like you grew up in a farming household. And, the work ethic,
Yes.
Dad working 2 and 3 jobs. I'm sure you were up at 4 a.m. taking care of cows and other animals there, right? So, and it translates, I think, in the career. So good for you guys and good for your family. Sure. No. So, and on the manufacturing front, so as a firm, we've, over the years, I've worked with a lot of manufacturing firms, aerospace firms. And I know one of the big concerns always, whether, it's somebody that is, working at the firm or if they're selling the firm, it's always staying compliant with environmental issues. And it's never easy. It's always one of these things that, they're just concerned about, audits and the environment. And yeah, I'm just curious, how do you help these owners navigate through some of those hurdles that they face in that business?
Yeah, sure, Eric. So, basically you could put our business into 2 main buckets. The first bucket being environmental and health and safety due diligence. So we get involved with transactions between businesses and property owners. So, for example, if a local machine shop decides to sell their business to another organization, we may work for either the buyer or the seller during that transaction to determine, are there any environmental pollution issues that resulted from the use of that property as an industrial facility? Were there any oil tanks that leaked or spills of solvents or other things like that? So we help determine, what the environmental liabilities are for the various parties that hire us and help them not only find the problems, but really and importantly, determine what the best approach is to deal with any legacy environmental pollution issues. So that's the first bucket of our business, I would say. And then the second primary bucket is environmental health and safety compliance. And that's more of a forward-looking management system type of an approach. It's not so much looking at past sins and, old legacy pollution sites at facilities, but more so looking at the programs that are in place in an organization and helping the organization comply with the various environmental and OSHA regulations, as well as some other, federal and global different regulations and things. So there's a myriad of different programs we get involved with, both with OSHA, EPA, and then certainly the local DEPs and regulatory agencies. So it's pretty robust. So that's sort of the two main buckets. We also have an engineering arm that supports both of those two buckets, plus also we get involved with some civil work, roadways and bridges, Department of Transportation work, that type of stuff.
Well, that's good. It sounds like you're set up well for maybe some of the work of the new administration. And along that line, I mean, administrations change, the pendulum always swings back and forth. Are there any, today, looking forward over the next 4 years here, are there any new regulations or guidelines that listeners need to address in the coming months, in your opinion?
Yeah, so on the federal side, I haven't really seen a lot of major changes with the environmental regs just yet. These things tend to take a while to take hold and stuff with changes in administration. But one of the things we're seeing is obviously with the concerns around climate change, there's definitely a concerted effort at the federal level for carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions and trying to limit those. So one of the things we get involved with on the compliance end of our consulting is helping businesses with air compliance regulations, air permitting, stack testing to some degree. So there tends to be more and more regulation and compliance needs around all of that air emission type stuff. There's also not so much associated with the administrative change, but just an overall new program, so to speak, that's coming out here in the last handful of years is an identified new suite of contaminants. They're called PFAS. They're fluorinated compounds that were associated with manufacturing of Teflon and some other products like that. They're actually very pervasive in a lot of the goods that we use in our homes. Used to be found actually in dental floss, obviously Teflon in our frying pans and lip balms, you name it. These compounds were used in a lot of things. And now we're starting to find that those compounds are actually present in our drinking water supplies, soils, some of the foods that we eat. And it's taken a little bit to catch hold at the regulation end of things, but in the last year or two, it's gotten a lot of momentum, and I'm anticipating a lot of new regulations and enforcement around identifying these compounds in the environment and dealing with how to clean them up. So that's a couple things at the... Go ahead, Eric.
Oh, no, sorry. I was saying, so are you saying that we should go home and throw out our children's waffle makers?
It's a funny question. I actually still use our Teflon-coated waffle maker. It's one of my favorite cooking devices on the weekends with the kids, making waffles and whipped cream. So I still use it. I think, the Teflon frying pans, it tends to be so inert. It's a hard material at that point. But it's more so on the manufacturing side where these compounds were released into the air and the waters and the soils and things and get uptake into our biota. And, that's where the concerns really are. So
Got
I think
it.
the science, the science is out there and they're trying to catch up with stuff, but we call it an emerging contaminant. So anyhow.
Got it. Got it. So the other thing we've all heard a lot about is, carbon neutrality, and how are you involved with that ultimately?
Yeah, again, it's primarily on the air compliance side of our business. So again, we look at air emissions, whether it be from a air compressor or a generator or some sort of an engine, boilers, anything where you're combusting anything, burning anything. That process involves emissions to the air, and there's a lot of regulations, both at the state and federal level, that regulate those emissions. And every year that goes by, there's more and more restrictions on those emissions, and it all ties obviously to carbon. So, yeah,
Got it.
that's how we get involved.
Yeah, you guys have a lot of moving pieces. So I know that you manage a big team. You're part of managing a big team here in Connecticut. My understanding is you're a national firm. When you're managing all these teams and multiple projects, are there any skills you found are most helpful? Because I know, again, you have a lot of plates in the air.
Sure, Eric. Yeah, here in Connecticut, we've got about 50 technical professionals, engineers, scientists, geologists, and work with a great bunch of folks. It's a lot of fun coming to work every day. So I'd say one of the things that I've found very helpful and important leading these offices is really just leveraging the power of the team versus the skill set of any one individual. So, my great-grandfather used to say, many hands make light work, and I really appreciate that sentiment and really think that's applicable to this business and probably most businesses where, you can have one person working on a project and get a good result, but I'm amazed by when you put a group of people together, the different ideas that come out of that group and the brainstorming and just the power of collaboration and innovation. You end up more often than not with a much better product and service for our clients with a team-wide approach. So that's one thing I've sort of learned over the years. And another thing, just, in terms of leadership and things, I think having a clear vision for the path forward, just understanding, all right, here's where we're at, here's where we want to be in some future point in time as an organization, as consultants to our clients, and really just having a simple and clear vision for what that is really helps inform the day-to-day operations and helps everybody pull on the rope in the same direction. So those are a couple things, and there's so much more I could talk about on the management leadership side, but
no, that's awesome.
Those are the two biggies.
I was listening to a woman speak the other day, who's just, world-class leader, and she said, there's an old African saying that, if you want to go somewhere quickly, do it alone. If you want to go far, do it with a team. And I thought that really hit home for me.
Well said.
Yeah. So I know that, we've spent a good amount of time together and share some similar hobbies. In the past, you've shared some positive changes that have been made at the organization on an ongoing basis that you're really excited about. Are there any transformations you'd care to share with the audience in terms of some things that maybe have led to better outcomes for your clients, for example?
Yeah, I'd say one of the focuses of HRP initially back in the early 80s when our business first started was focused on cleanup of old historic legacy pollution issues. So, think an old plating shop with industrial lagoons out back and excavating the polluted soils from that lagoon and treating the groundwater to make it cleaner and safer for the environment and drinking water sources. So we started out primarily doing that type of work, that corrective action type of work. And over the years, we've transformed such that we're not only doing that, but again, we're looking at more so a proactive, forward-looking compliance assistance. So we'll now, rather than go out and dig up, tons and tons of polluted soil and stuff, we still do that, but more so we try to create programs for manufacturers and utility companies and others to really implement management systems and perform internal audits for companies to ensure that they're doing things properly, handling waste materials properly, and training their employees with handling and disposal of materials that could be hazardous to health or the environment. So it's much more of a proactive consulting business now, looking to the future rather than trying to correct past sins. So that's one thing. And here in Connecticut, I work with a lot of the local manufacturers and some of the big aerospace companies here. And there's some recent changes with some of the laws here in Connecticut with there's a proposed sunsetting of the Connecticut transfer law that I think will be helpful to businesses. So we're working with them on, crafting the different details of the regulations around that sunsetting of the property transfer law and creation of a new release-based program here in Connecticut. So there's a couple of the things we're working on currently.
That's awesome. It's funny when you speak about lagoons and some of the old pollution. I remember when I started my career, oftentimes, many of my clients, Fairfield and New Haven County, but I remember walking into some of the machine shops and just, there was just oil in the air from all the Bridgeport machinery. And actually, it was so cool. It was loud. And today it's just amazing. Like, I don't think, I think parents, when they're speaking to their kids about careers, they don't recognize that just how sterile the manufacturing environment has become over time. I'm just really blown away by, the size of the machines, how clean they are, how quiet they are in this day and age. It's mind-blowing, really.
Absolutely, Eric. When I first got out of college, I had this utopian view of the industry and thought, geez, I'm gonna come out of school and try to save the world, and any kind of manufacturing's probably really bad for the environment and stuff. And one of the things I've really learned over the years is actually manufacturing in today's society is remarkably clean. I think it's in manufacturers' best interest to run clean operations. They are able to produce better, more precise parts. And I've been amazed, in my 20-year career, how clean a lot of these manufacturing entities and utility companies really are. So my view of what I thought this industry would be has actually changed quite a bit over the last 20 years.
Yeah, and the pay for some of these young people is really extraordinary versus some of the other career paths. So, I just wanted to mention that for those that are listening that may not be familiar with manufacturing. The other thing too, Jason, which we've talked about quite a bit, is you guys have really come up with an amazing YouTube channel and podcast. And I just think it's awesome because you guys give 5 or 10 minutes worth of great info for busy people, busy engineers in manufacturing that really could use the help when it comes to some of the challenges they face running their shops and companies.
Absolutely, Eric. Right around the beginning of the pandemic, about 15 months ago, our CEO, Dan Titus, had this innovative idea of how can we still, even though we're working out of our homes or basements or whatever, remotely, how can we still connect with our clients and prospective future clients and just, the regulated community in general. So he envisioned this idea of developing a YouTube channel, and it's really taken off. So we've got a number of videos that we've already posted, and there's a lot of helpful information on how-tos. There's one video out there right now that's about completing annual OSHA forms that are required for any employer, basically. So just a quick little blurb on that. And every week we put out a new YouTube video, both in terms of how-tos or how do you interpret this regulation or how do you do stormwater sampling, all the way to, hey, meet our new engineer that started or meet our CEO. And so it's a good way to teach our clients about some technical things that they probably need help with, as well as just a chance for us to highlight our employees and help everyone understand who we are and what our culture is. And that's a lot of fun. So, I encourage everyone to check out our YouTube channel.
That's awesome. And I did, and it's really good. So, and I would imagine, so with COVID, I know, it's in my mind, I'm hoping it's in our rearview mirror going forward here, but I know a lot of clients called on you during that. I was just curious, are there any services that you brought on board during that period or this period that will probably remain as part of your DNA going forward in terms of your consulting?
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. So we started out during the pandemic. A lot of our clients reached out and said, hey, we want to get back to work. How can we do it safely? It seems like the CDC guidance is changing daily or weekly, and there's a lot of confusion around that. So we invested in following the updated guidance and OSHA regulations that came out around COVID and how to protect workers, and contracted with a lot of different clients, manufacturers, and some utility companies to help them develop plans and auditing programs to really help them get back to work quicker and safer, and if they did have an incident, how to deal with an incident of COVID in the workplace. And that turned out pretty well. Now that we're on the back end of the pandemic and things seem to be opening up well, we're helping clients now with getting back to basics with their different compliance obligations. Some things employee training and audits, and like things like lockout, tagout procedures, and ISO compliance. A lot of manufacturers fall under, they're qualified with ISO. So we help out with that stuff now. There's definitely an uptick with the environmental health and safety end of things, and getting employers back into compliance that may have slipped during the pandemic.
Got it. So give me an example of that. So somebody hires you for improving their compliance, or any of these other areas, lockout, tagout. Are you sending a team in there to work side by side with the company owner or the executives, or the players, I should say?
Precisely. Yeah, we'll spend, depending on the size and complexity of the operation, we'll spend a day to a week at a facility with a team, typically a couple of professionals, and we'll look at all the applicable environmental regulations that pertain to the site or the plant, as well as all the OSHA health and safety regs. So we'll go through and work with the facilities manager or health and safety professional at the plant, look at all their record keeping, walk the plant floor, ask a lot of questions, and basically identify any gaps that may exist. And then we'll work with them to determine a timeline and an approach to fill those gaps and achieve a closer end to compliance with the different programs and things. Then some of the manufacturers have actually hired us on a part-time basis following an audit to really help them get into compliance and maintain compliance. So doing periodic inspections or training of employees on record keeping and how to handle hazardous waste, fill out a manifest for shipping haz waste, that type of stuff. So yeah, it's pretty busy stuff. But manufacturers are going to much prefer having us in there finding these gaps than getting a knock on the door by a state or federal agency saying, hey, we're here from the government and we're going to do an audit here, surprise audit, and, find a bunch of stuff. And then what happens sometimes is, they'll end up sending fines after the fact and stuff. So it's much better when an employer's proactive, has us come out, find any gaps that they may have and get them fixed before a regulator finds them.
Yeah, I think in any industry, including ours, just having a culture of compliance is great. And I think it's something it's a must have, right? So, kudos to what you guys are doing. So when you started your career, or if let's say there's a young person coming into your business, or some, maybe for you, maybe it's, is there anything that you wish you had known when you began your career, or is there any advice you'd give to somebody coming into the career now in terms of some background they may want to focus in on?
Yeah, I work primarily with scientists and engineers, Eric. Being an environmental consulting firm, that tends to be who we hire, and that's great. So studying, science, whether it be chemistry, physics, geology, biology, calculus, differential equations, whatever, all that's definitely used in this industry and important. But advice to a young person that's interested in the engineering or consulting field, I would say don't be afraid of some of the other sort of liberal arts type coursework as well. So things like philosophy, history, organizational behavior, I find that to be very important in this industry. Just having a good sense of yourself, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, as well as really being able to interact with clients and regulators and have a bigger, broader worldview than just, say, engineering or just mathematics. Having a good foundation is very important in this industry. So, that'd be a piece of advice I'd give. And, keep an open mind. You're not going to save the world as one individual in this industry, but, we all chip away at it one site at a time and one client at a time, helping them out. So at the end of the day, it's a pretty rewarding field.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know you take pride in what you do. So, Jason, if you would, can you tell us a little bit about your family or any hobbies or pursuits you find outside of work?
Absolutely, Eric. Yeah, so I've got 3 beautiful kids, Olivia, Lily, and Jack. They range in age from 9 years to 13 years old, and they're extremely athletic. So my wife and I are shuttling them around pretty much New England at this point to soccer games and hockey games. And my 2 girls actually are black belts in Taekwondo, and they keep us really busy nights and weekends shuttling them around to sporting events. And I never was that athletic growing up, but somehow I think through my wife, my kids got this athletic gene, and it's a lot of fun watching them run around and work on a team, with a bunch of great kids and stuff. So that keeps me busy. And and then when I get a little downtime, if and when I do, it's been hard to find that lately, but one of the things I love doing and have loved since I was a young boy is fly fishing. I tie my own flies. I love camping, canoeing, hiking. And actually, we just got a new puppy about a month ago, Duke. So my family and I are in the process of training Duke with a bunch of stuff. So, we're pretty busy. It's a lot of fun getting home at the end of the day, hanging out with the fam.
It's funny, as you're speaking about your daughters having their black belts, I'm thinking, when you get to that point where you have to start asking firmly for their phones, I'm like, well, I hope they don't pull any moves on you.
Exactly.
No, it is funny. That's the big struggle for us right now with a preteen is just, the phone usage and, can you please put it away after 9 o'clock? And it's always it's a longer discussion than we'd like to have, right? I'm sure that doesn't happen in your house, but it happens in ours.
I wish I could say that was the case, but sometimes we do deal with that, Eric. But luckily there's sports and a puppy now, so that both good distractions. But no, in all reality, I think my kids, compared to a lot of their peers, they're pretty good with maintaining a reasonable amount of tablet time. So
that's awesome.
That's
great. Good luck with the dog. We have a new puppy at home too, and he's so much fun and so much energy. And we have a 4-year-old dog as well, and she's being very tolerant, but she'll look at us saying, "Do you see what this idiot is doing?" It's pretty funny. She just turns and starts staring at us. She's like shaking her head. She's like, "Why did you bring this thing home?" But there's a lot of joy in the house with a puppy for sure. So listen, I know you're helpful. I know you want to help people. I know you have that spirit of wanting to help your clients. Is there any advice you would give, to clients or friends, whether it be a book or suggestions that you tend to be some of your go-to recommendations?
Yeah, I love that question. And, I guess speaking of tablets and being on cell phones a lot, I think if we all sit back and reflect on where we were in the 80s and 90s versus where we are today, the world's moving at about Mach 10, with the pace of information floating around and stuff. So in college, one of the stories we read in an American literature course was Walden by Henry David Thoreau. And I don't know, I liked his perspective on things. He tended to be rooted in simplicity and just sort of looked at the world in a very simple way. It's sort of like one of his ideas was that, some of the best thinking happens when you take away all these distractions in life and just sort of focus on the natural environment and sort of the pace, slowing your pace down a little bit and stuff. So
that's great.
Sort of some advice I would give is, just somehow in your life, whatever your hobbies are, whether it's reading or fly fishing or taking a walk with your dog or anything else, try to find some Zen time in whatever form suits your fancy.
No, I think that's awesome advice, especially today as, things are getting busier again and, the highways are starting to back up again and, which is great post-COVID. I'm thrilled, but I think with it brings, those complications back into our lives. That's great advice. So Jason, in terms of our listeners, if anybody needs to reach out to you, what's the best way to communicate with you?
They can call my number anytime, 203-695-7180, or they can also find me on LinkedIn, Jason Beach at HRP Associates. There's also a link on our website, www.hrpassociates.com.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. And I know the manufacturing firms out there throughout the country, in my case, specifically to the ones that I work with in Connecticut, I know they appreciate you guys and the great work you do. So thank you for being on this morning.
Thanks for having me, Eric. I appreciate it.
Guys, this was fantastic. Jason, I'm so glad that you came on the show. I've never actually had a chance to hear an interview with someone in your position. So this was really enlightening to me, and I'm thinking it was for the audience as well. So thanks again for being here. Eric, of course, thank you for bringing him on the show. It's always a pleasure getting together with you, and the folks that you know and that you bring on this show, they're incredible. And so I appreciate that. And of course, our last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast with Eric Tashline. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Eric comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at Connecticut Capital Management Group, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Connecticut Capital. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. Content should not be construed as personalized investment, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your advisor, attorney, or tax advisor in regards to your individual situation. Eric Tashline is an investment advisory representative of Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC, and Connecticut Benefits Group, LLC are not affiliated.